The Earth is, by different people's estimations and scientific knowledge, many, 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 many years old. Some say thousands, some say millions, some say billions. Does it really matter? No, in one sense it really doesn't. If I need food and clothing and shelter today, it really doesn't matter how old the Earth is. It may matter what time of the year it is, what time of day it is, how many days it is since I ate. That time matters. How much rest I got last night. That would matter. How old is the strawberries, right? Because that'll tell me when I can pick them. How ripe are the mulberries? Well, I know it's July and the mulberries are ripe, so I can tell that age. You know, it's July, we can tell age that way. How old are those trees? Well, they're big and can bear a lot of fruit, so I know how old that tree is. How old's that animal? Well, you know, that buck has big forks on him, so he's got to be 2-3 years old at least. Unless he's a really old one and he can only grow 2 forks. Well, I can tell the age. Well, they tell the age of horses. They used to by taking a look at their teeth. You know, if you cut down a tree, you count the rings and you got an idea of how many years that tree's been around. But scientifically, and I've heard people say that, how old is the Earth? Well, if you really want to know, the best science that I've seen is you don't know, and you can't know. I've worked in a research laboratory. You get the circuits, you get the parts. So say you get that transformer that's got to fit in that power circuit, right? Whether it's push, pull, fly back, whatever. And you're like, well, how long is that transformer going to last? Well, we can prove it. We get so many samples and we run them for so long, and then we've got an idea of whether that manufacturer has produced a transformer that will last as long as they say. And after we get done testing things, we know what they've been through, and so we know the age of the parts, right? Well, we know the age of the parts because we got them. What we did to them accelerated their age and wore them out a whole lot quicker. So if I take the same parts to another expert, right, a Q&A guy, and I said, here's a transformer, here's some other transformers, how old are they? Well, if he goes in and he checks and everything, he looks the how they've worn and all of that, they can say, well, that one's been in a product for, 10, 15 years, and that one, just came out of the box, and that one's been. And then I tell them, well, no, I actually had them in a heat chamber. I was heating them up and cooling them down. I had humidity. Oh, well, you aged the part, If he assumed that they had come out of a board, or if I'd been really sneaky and stuck the part in a board, a dirty board, not a brand new board. If he would have been clueless and couldn't see where it was soldered in, I mean, he would be like, well, what? Because you can accelerate how old things look by what you do to them. I mean, some people look younger than what they actually are. Some people look older. When I worked in a kitchen, like, I need that steak in 6 minutes. The customer is upset. Somebody missed their order, and they're not going to wait 15-20 minutes to cook that piece of steak the way you normally cook it on the broiler. So you take the steak out, you cut it in half, if you can get away with cutting it in half. If you can't, you poke it a few times. And then you get this great big piece of steel that we used. I wish I had one here. Ah, I know. We had heavy pieces of steel. These came out of a motor. But we had heavy steel plates, and we would set it on the steak because if you increase the pressure on it, it cooks faster. So the order comes out, and they both eat their steak, and the one that was forgotten shows up at the same time, I know this for a fact, as the one that cooked the longest in the right way, or the normal way. Because, hey, it's just carbon, right? I need to accelerate its decay. I need to advance its state of aging. Or, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So both customers, both guests, they're like, oh, my steak is just perfect. They didn't know that one started cooking a lot later than the other one, and we did special things to it to advance its age. And artists and engineers and people throughout time have done that to various things on our earth. So they appear older, they're brought to a state of completion, they're put in a form, let's say, scientifically speaking, that makes them appear as if, by a natural process, they've been around for hundreds or thousands or millions of years, depending on what you believe. They both wouldn't know about the steaks. I've cooked lots of different steaks. I mean, we figured out how, if push came to shove, and you had too many customers that night and you hadn't thought out the steaks correctly, you could cook a frozen steak if you knew what you were doing. There's a process, and that's without microwaving. That's without a convection oven, and that's without putting it in a broiler where you increase the temperature and the pressure on it. Because if you broil something, you can cook it quicker because of the pressure. And then when I got to college, it's like, oh yeah, here's the science. Here's the formula. You increase the temperature, you increase the pressure, you affect the state of the given object. Whether it's gas or matter, or whatever it is, right? You change its state, you affect it, you accelerate it. Which means you heat it up. And that's what we were doing with the steaks. I was like, oh wow, there's science behind this. We can predict all of this. This is great fun. I was doing some chemistry there and didn't realize it. Yeah, thermodynamics. I got a thermodynamics book here. Yeah, you change the temperature and the pressure, you can affect the state. You can go from a solid to a liquid to a gas. And if somebody thought it takes 15 minutes to cook a steak that well, guess what? They're mistaken. Because I can change that piece of carbon from raw flesh to a steak that you like in a short period of time or a long period of time. It depends on if somebody has actually given us the knowledge and the information that somebody else wanted a piece of steak well done, or medium rare, or whatever it is, right? And that's carbon. You know, flesh is carbon, right? I just changed the state of the carbon, right? Well, you take those same animals, right? And you crunch them all up and everything. You slap some dirt on them and you put some pressure and some heat and poof, you could have coal or oil. And I grew up, and the book said it takes millions of years to do this. And then I read in my thermodynamics book that all we really need to do is change the pressure and the temperature, and time doesn't matter. In the formulas, in the book, time doesn't matter. Mathematically, scientifically, we take it out of the equation. Doesn't matter. Page 621. Fundamentals of thermodynamics. This is giving back to the government because I had help going to college. Financial help. 6th edition. Don't be fooled, America. or anybody else who's listening. Page 621, example 15.1. What pressure is required to make diamonds from graphite at a temperature of 25 degrees C? The following data is given for a temperature of 25 degrees C and a pressure of 0.1 MPa. Time doesn't matter in making diamonds either. And that's just really the hardest form of carbon, because you can take those animals and turn them into coal or oil or diamonds. You're just compressing the carbon. And then on the next two following pages you get all the math. So, you don't know how long it took me to cook that steak. You don't know how long it took for that diamond to be made either. Scientifically speaking, the math is just plain. For anybody to say it took, well, any amount of time. Definitely it took 1,000 years. Definitely it took 1,000,000 years to make that diamond what it is. Somebody just grab a book and, here, look at the math. Go ahead, look at the math. Do the math scientifically. Just do the math. How are you telling me where the time is? How long? Well, the people who make diamonds, they'll tell you. Yeah, if I use this pressure and this temperature, and I start with the seed for the diamond is certain, it'll take this long to make a diamond. And they do it in days and weeks because they're making money at it. Man-made diamonds. And unless they mark them, they've gotten so good at it, it's hard to tell man-made diamonds from real diamonds. And if you're the average John Doe, the average person, you might not know. I mean, if you don't know diamonds, who knows, right? Because time doesn't matter. So if somebody asks you or tells you, well, it takes this long to make a diamond, you're like, no, it doesn't. It takes pressure, temperature. So we know, scientifically, that our whole world runs on these cycles. How long did it take the rain to fall? Well, it depends on the rate at which the rain fell. How long did it take that animal to grow? Well, there's a growth rate for the animal in its cycle of life. Same way with the water. There's a water cycle. There's a cooking cycle, right? Well, it takes this long to cook the item, unless you accelerate it with pressure and temperature, right? You already know that, because I told you, and there's the book, and you can go look it up. How long to get it through the whole cycle? Well, there are accelerated growth rates. There are accelerated decay rates. Oh wait, we can change the rate of decay. We can change some growth rates too. Yeah, if you read around, bass in the southern United States, they grow bigger. The same age of bass in northern Minnesota isn't going to be as big. Not because the time was different, but because down in the south, they've got more time to feed, more time to grow. It's warmer. Temperature has changed. Environment has changed. So therefore, a 30-year-old bass in Florida, let's say, is going to look and be a different size and appear different than a bass out of the little lake next to my parents' house in northern Minnesota. It's just the way it is. It's how growth is affected by time, temperature, and environment. So how are you going to tell the age of the bass? I mean, there's ways that they get in and they check some things, but they're going to ask you, where did it live? How old's the tree? How old's the diamond? How long did it take for that to decay to that state? I mean, scientifically, you can figure things out and ask, but after a while, because the rates of decay change, because the rates of growth change, because pressure and temperature, not just time, and environment can make things appear differently than what they are. I know by science, there's a whole lot of things you just can't tell. So if you can't tell me logically how old the diamond is, and that's one of the hardest substances on Earth, and I know everything else is on a cycle. They recycle, nature recycles. So the carbon that is in you today was in a plant yesterday or the day before, or it was in a cow or a chicken, whatever ate the plant protein, carbon, right? So it just goes through these cycles. And then someday you'll get rid of your carbon and somebody else will be using it. So how old is the carbon in that state? How old is the carbon that we just keep recycling? Well, there's laws in thermodynamics. It says everything's heading toward a state of balance. There's this entropy, this decay. Everything is coming apart. And there's another law of thermodynamics that says matter can't change. Energy, matter. Well, I should go look up what that says again. But basically, it just changes state. You go from a solid to a gas, a solid to a liquid to a gas. That's the layman's way of saying it. I could look it up in the book, read it scientifically. Or you could too, and learn something. But I know enough science to know that, well, they can't know for sure. You just can't know for sure. Because the decay rates change. Growth rates are different. It's just the way it is. So how do you know for sure? Well, you really don't. How do you know atoms are always coming apart at the same rate? Well, we don't know. We know now, but that doesn't mean yesterday. I mean, entropy is affected by whether I leave that piece of carbon sitting on my stovetop, or whether it's in the freezer. That's affecting the decay. And on a molecular level, they know things get cooled down enough that molecules stop moving. So logically, you don't know. Yeah, you can figure, you can kind of guess. But eventually, well, you don't really know. How old are you? Well, you don't really know unless somebody tells you. And then you get old enough that you can figure it out. But there's stuff they just don't know. And to say you know is dishonest. That's why they say we have a consensus. That's a commonly held belief. And it was a commonly held belief at one time that the Earth was flat. And it was a commonly held belief at one time, a consensus that everything in the known universe revolved around the Earth. Scientific consensus is just what everybody who's in that power to discuss and say and write is what it is. It's a consensus. It's what we commonly know. It's what we commonly believe. And it may be right and it may be wrong. But it's basically a commonly held belief or understanding. So unless you can actually run tests, like this will fall at 32 feet per second, thereabouts, on Earth, or 9.81 meters. You don't know, and it gets to a point where It's not affecting my diet. It's not affecting me being alive. It's just people who are getting paid to argue about this stuff for some political, scientific, or power control reason. That's pretty much what it gets down to. People want you to give them their attention and believe them and have all these positive vibes. They keep their jobs and they keep their positions and their praises. But really, when it gets down to it, it doesn't matter. Unless what you believe, your faith, matters to you. But scientifically, logically, as a human being, it matters that I have a license when I go out in the woods, and that it's the right time of year, and that the deer is old enough. Oh, and that it's the right sex to go with the license. That's what matters. Oh, and that I have my physics right, and I pull my bow back far enough, and that the deer senses are fooled enough, and that I don't make any stupid noises before the arrow gets loose, and then I hit the deer in the right spot. The age of the earth doesn't matter. And they can't know. So why argue about it? Scientifically. I mean, it's not like you're discussing whether that piece of fruit is old enough to be eaten, right? Without giving you a bellyache. Or that tree is old enough to bear fruit. Or other natural processes that we need to take place over a certain period of time for living things or non-living things. You know, how old's the diamond? Well, how long's the diamond been in the machine back there? Because we want to make money, right? Time? No. Pressure, temperature. That determines the time, and then whether we can sell them. Yeah, when you get right down to it, it doesn't matter. Unless it matters to your faith. But scientifically, it doesn't matter. The person who buys a man-made diamond, or a diamond that's made by nature, what do they care? Unless, you know, I paid, you know, $500,000 for this diamond and somebody just ran it through a machine. Looks really good and everything, fools you. But it's not what it is. If they claim that it was a natural made diamond. So how old is it? Well, it depends on how much you paid for it. Right? How much attention, how much energy, how much esteem you gave somebody. Other than that, if you're just scientific and a bit skeptical and down to earth and everything, that really doesn't matter. As a matter of your faith, well, then it could matter. If your faith says the earth is about so old. But scientifically, it doesn't matter. You think about it. Age of the earth. You're going to live maybe 60, 70, 100 years, right? That's just 1/10 of 1,000 years. What does it matter? Yeah, that's why I just stopped listening to them, because I know enough science to say, forget it. I'm not going to pay you any more attention. And now you don't need to either. Unless it's a matter of your faith. Then it's a matter of faith versus science. Enjoy. Enjoy.